What's going on, everybody? Khalipa's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. This is tips, tricks, and cool features for the Samsung Galaxy A23. In this video, I'm going to be showing you some different tips and tricks for this phone that you might not know about. Now, before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. And if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my full review and other tips and tricks videos for it as well. But with that being said, let's get started. So the first thing I want to show you for this phone is a feature called Attentive Display. Now, back in my beginner's guide, we talked about how to change the screen timeout time so the phone won't fall asleep on you when you're doing something like watching a video, viewing photos, or maybe reading. But although changing the screen timeout time does work in certain situations, sometimes it's just really not efficient because if you have the display on for that long, sometimes you might forget to lock it, and then it could just stay on unnecessarily and drain your battery as a result. So with the Attentive Display feature, what it does is basically uses the front-facing camera to detect your face, and as long as it sees you looking at the phone, the screen is going to stay on, but then when you put the phone down, it's going to auto-lock like normal. So this way you get the best of both worlds. You can have a shorter, more reasonable screen timeout time, but when you need the display to stay on, it's going to stay on. So to activate this feature, we're going to go to Settings. From here, go to Advanced Features. And from here, go to Motions and Gestures. And toggle on Keep Screen On while viewing. Now this is one of those features that's a little tricky to demonstrate in action, but I will say from experience it does work. The next thing I'm going to show you is a feature called Adaptive Brightness. This is pretty self-explanatory. Adaptive Brightness is going to adjust the brightness of your display based on your environment. So if you're in a really well-lit room, it's going to brighten up the display to match. And this is especially useful if you're outside or something like that where there's direct sunlight, because in those situations when your display isn't too bright, it can be pretty hard to see. But on the other hand, when you're in the dark or somewhere where you don't need it to be as bright, it'll dim the display so it can save battery and be a little easier on your eyes. So to turn this feature on, we're going to go to Settings. From here, go to Display, and simply toggle on Adaptive Brightness. As you can see, it immediately adjusts, so it definitely does work pretty well. Now that being said, although adaptive brightness is really effective, not everyone likes to use it. For me personally, I do like to keep it at 100% brightness at all times because I'm not really that concerned about battery life. I mean, I have my phone plugged in all the time, so it doesn't really matter to me. But if you haven't used it before, I definitely recommend giving it a try because you might end up liking it. Now, for those of you who don't like to use adaptive brightness and like to keep the display at 100% brightness at all times, besides the more or less minor effect it has on battery life, really the only drawback is it can be a little hard on your eyes in darker lighting, but we do have a way around this too. And that feature is actually right here. It's called Eye Comfort Shield. Basically what this does is tints the screen in an amber color, so you can still have it really bright, but it's going to filter out some of that blue light that can be harder on your eyes, so you can really get the best of both worlds. Now you can also customize this, so you can make it a little bit stronger, or a little bit weaker as well. And you can also schedule it to turn on at certain times of day, so maybe you only want it on at night, and you can do a custom time as well. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to show and hide your battery percentage on the status bar. So as you can see right here, the battery percentage is showing right now. And if you want to get rid of it so the status bar can be a little bit more minimalistic, all you need to do is go to Settings. From here, go to Notifications. From this menu, go to Advanced Settings. And in the status bar section, show battery percentage by default is going to be on, and as you can see, the battery percentage is no longer here. Now if you want to see the battery percentage occasionally, but you don't want it to be up there all the time, all you got to do is pull down this shade, and it's going to be right here anyway. The next thing we're going to go over is what you can do with the power key. Now by default, if I double tap the power key, it's going to open the camera. Definitely a real nice feature to have and super convenient if you want to capture something really quickly in the moment, but I'm going to show you what else we can do with it. So to get to these options, of course, we're going to go to Settings. From here, go to Advanced Features. And from here, go to Side Key. So as you can see, the default setting is double pressing the power key is going to open the camera. Again, a really cool feature. If you don't want it to do anything, of course, you can toggle it off entirely. So now if we double press the power key, it's just going to lock it, but you can also set it to open an app, and now you can choose any app you want. So maybe you have an alternate camera app like Snapchat or something like that. Now if we double press the power key, instead of the camera, it's going to open Snapchat. And again, you can do this with any app you want. To change it, all you need to do is hit the gear right here, and you'll get the option to select whatever you want to use. Now, I personally like to have it open the camera myself, but if you do have an app you use really often, having the option to quick launch an app instead is always nice. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is how to change your system navigation. Now, as you can see down here, we got the classic 3 buttons. We got the recent apps button, the home button, and of course the back button. Pretty standard. Android phones have had this for quite some time, but there are some options we can change here, so let's go over them. First thing we're going to do, of course, is go to settings. From here, go to display. From this menu, go down to navigation bar. And as you can see, we got 2 options here. First one is changing the order of the buttons. So you can put the back button on the left and the recent apps button on the right. Doesn't really change a whole lot, but if you like it this way, you can always do it. Now, the other option we have is to change the system navigation entirely to swipe gestures. Now, this is going to get rid of all the buttons and replace them with this little line down here. So real quickly, let me show you how this works. So instead of pressing a button to go home, swipe up from the bottom. To go to your recent apps, drag your finger up and hold it. And to go back, swipe from left to right or right to left. In addition to this, if you hit more options right here, we got some other things we can change. We got gesture sensitivity right here, pretty self-explanatory. And there's another option called swipe up from bottom. This is basically button navigation, but it hides the buttons. So for recent apps, swipe up from the left. To go home, swipe up from the middle. And to go back, swipe up from the right. In my opinion, there's not a whole lot of a point to it, but I guess if you want button navigation but you don't want the buttons to actually show, then this is an option. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is how to change the refresh rate of your display. Now, in case you don't know, this phone does have a 90 Hz refresh rate, which is great for content consumption because it will make the movement on the screen a little bit faster and smoother. And when you're just navigating through the phone in general, it's going to feel a little bit more premium. But at the same time, a higher refresh rate is going to use up a little bit more power, so your battery life might not be as good. But with this phone, you can change it back to a 60 Hz refresh rate if you want to save a little more power. So to do this, we're going to go to settings. From here, go to display, and go to motion smoothness. As you can see, the default setting is adaptive, which is basically going to be at 90 Hz, but if you want, you can change it to standard, which is going to take it down to 60 Hz, so you can save a little battery life. Now, to actually make this change, don't forget to hit apply. Don't just hit the back button or it won't do anything. Now, I personally wouldn't really worry too much about the refresh rate myself, just because, yeah, on one hand, it does save a little battery life, but unless you're in a situation where you're not near a charger for a long period of time, I don't really think it's going to make a huge difference. But all the same, depending on how you actually use your phone, switching the refresh rate back to 60 Hz might actually be a good decision for you. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is a feature called finger sensor gestures. This is a pretty cool one. Basically what it does is allows you to use your fingerprint scanner to open your notification center instead of going like this. So to do this, as always, we're going to go to settings. From here, go to advanced features. Go to motions and gestures. Go to finger sensor gestures, and toggle this on. So now with this feature on, all you need to do to open your notification center is swipe down on the fingerprint scanner. And then to close it, just swipe up. Now for me, I usually think this feature is kind of annoying because I always open it by accident, but with this phone, it's not nearly as sensitive, so I actually think it's okay here. But definitely give it a try and see for yourself whether or not you like it, because it is really going to be up to personal preference. The next thing I'm going to show you is a feature called Dual Messenger. What this does is allows you to log into 2 accounts at once on certain apps. So for example, Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, something like that. And the way it does this is basically downloads a copy of the app so you can log into multiple accounts. Now this feature's been around for quite a while, and nowadays with apps like Facebook and Instagram and stuff having multiple account features built into them, it's not nearly as useful as it once was, but all the same it still is a pretty nice thing to have. So to get to this feature, we're going to go to settings, go to advanced features, and Dual Messenger is going to be at the very bottom of this menu. So as you can see, these are the apps I have that are eligible, and all you need to do to activate it is simply toggle on whichever ones you want to use. Now again, it may or may not be very useful depending on which apps you want to use it with, because Facebook, for example, I know Facebook actually does have a multiple account feature, and so many other apps like Instagram, for example, which isn't even on this list, have that same kind of thing as well. But all the same, it's still definitely a nice thing to know about. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is how to turn on the Edge panel. Now in the more recent versions of Android, Android, we've had a feature called an edge panel, which is basically this really cool shortcut center that's right on the side of your display. And for whatever weird reason, this phone actually doesn't come with it on, but it does have it, so let me show you how to activate it. What we're gonna do is go to Settings. From here, go to Display. And the edge panel is towards the bottom, right here. Toggle this on. And the edge panel is this little line right here. To open it, pull it like this. And essentially, this is what the edge panel looks like. Now the apps that are on here may or may not be super useful for you. So to customize it, hit these lines, hit edit, and now you can add or remove whatever apps you want. But those were my tips, tricks, and cool features for the Samsung Galaxy A23. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my other videos about it as well. But that's it for this video. As always, I will see you in the next one.